There are many points on the spectrum of belief to non-belief, and many subcategories within all of them. If I were to list every single religion and philosophical system, we'd be here till next Tuesday, and I still wouldn't get through all of them. So here is a broad overview of the types of theism and atheism with some squishy middle ground in between to help everyone understand why it's so hard to pin someone down in this regard. Oftentimes, people or religions will fit into multiple categories. Welcome to the Secular Scriptures. I'm Gail, and let's talk religion and philosophy. Some definitions and caveats. Belief is an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists, as in God's here. Trust, faith, or confidence in something, like a religion. Non-belief is a lack of belief in something, especially religion. Theism is the belief in the existence of one or more deities, while atheism is the absence of belief in the existence of any deities. There is a lot of variation in between. I'll do my best to name and generally define the type of belief and then give some limited examples of the religions, philosophies, or people who follow those beliefs. Please keep in mind that these are broad categories and one religion may fit into several different places due to different denominations or different beliefs within that religion. Beliefs can also change over a lifetime. Some people are listed in conflicting categories for that reason. Also note that the topic is belief, not worship. Those are two very different things. For example, someone may believe in angels, but not worship them. We will start with theism. Theism is a belief in God or gods. Monotheism is the belief in the existence of one God, singular. Examples include Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, Sikhism, the Baha'i faith, and Zoroastrianism. Classical theism is the belief in one all-powerful creator God as the ultimate reality. Examples of this are Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and Hinduism. Omnism is the belief that all religions hold truth, but no single religion holds all truth. People who followed Omnism are William Blake, the Unitarian Universalists, interfaith churches, and the Baha'i faith. Polytheism is the belief in the existence of multiple gods. Examples include ancient Greek and Roman religions, Hinduism, Shinto, Wicca, Taoism, and various indigenous religions, too numerous to name. Ditheism is a belief in two gods or higher powers who oppose each other. Examples would be male and female powers in Wicca, light or dark, good and evil. Or examples of this are Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Gnosticism. Pantheism is the belief that God is everything and everything is God, sometimes called nature worship. Some sects within Hinduism, Buddhism, Shinto, Taoism, Wicca, Stoicism, and the god of Spinoza. Albert Einstein is a classic example of a pantheist, and of course Spinoza himself. Ancestor worship is the veneration of the dead in a ritualistic fashion to varying degrees. Confucianism, Taoism, Shinto, Buddhism, Religio Romana, those are the ancient Roman religion. Nominally Catholicism with the veneration of saints and ancestors. The Day of the Dead is an example of this. Yoruba, Akan, and Bantu in Africa. Voodoo in the Americas. Ancestor veneration was common in pre-Columbian North American religious practices, many of which still survive today. Folk religions are a broad category of family, regional, and closed religious practices that are hard to classify en masse due to their diversity and sometimes hidden nature. They're often a combination of the dominant religion and private or secret practices, with the dominant religion being claimed on official documentation. This is by far the largest category, so I'll just list a few examples. We have Chinese folk religions, the dreaming from Australia, Appalachian granny magic, root work, and kitchen witchery, hoodoo, hedge witches, green witches, folk orthodoxy, and very broadly shamanism. Autotheism or egotheism is the belief that God exists within the self and or the individual can achieve a godlike state. God complex falls under this, but that is a recognized mental condition, not a philosophy or spiritual theory per se. Hinduism, the Latter-day Saints, formerly known as Mormonism, Transcendentalism, and Gnosticism are all autotheism or egotheism religious philosophies. Panentheism is the belief that God is both within and beyond the universe. Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, the New Age movement, and Sikhism. And I want to note here that Buddhism is often an atheistic religion, but not always. Henotheism is the belief in and worship of one God while not denying the existence of other gods. Hinduism, ancient Greek and Roman religions, ancient Canaanite religions, and Zoroastrianism. Monolatry is the recognition of the existence of multiple gods, but the worship of only one, which is similar. Hinduism in some cases, the early Canaanite religion, ancient Mesopotamian religions with city-specific gods, Christianity focusing on Jesus within the Trinity. Animism is believing that everything is alive, spirits are in all things, and that all things have souls. Examples of religions that follow animism are Shinto, Neo-paganism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and various indigenous traditions and folk traditions. Deism is a belief in a creator God who does not intervene in the universe. Unitarian Universalists, Christian deism, as in the watchmaker theory, Enlightenment thinking, pandeism, which says that God became the universe, are all examples of deism. Beliefs about the nature of God or gods. Eutheism is the belief that a deity is wholly benevolent. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, the Baha'i faith, and Sikhism all follow this. Dystheist refers to the belief that God exists but is not wholly good or might even be evil. A dystheist might be angry at God for perceived injuries or suffering in the world. Gnosticism, theistic Satanism, trickster gods like Loki, Eshu, and Bugs Bunny, arguably. Many Christians who are deconstructing consider the Christian God or gods to be dystheistic. An example of that is the problem of evil or the problem of suffering. Or if you take the biblical text literally. Maletheism is the belief that a deity exists but is wholly malicious. A male theist would likely feel intense anger and resentment towards such a god. Examples where this occurs are in Gnosticism, Satan within the Christian mythos, Calvinists who believe that they are not among the saved, and many former Christians with religious traumas believe that Yahweh, Adonai, Jehovah, whatever you want to call him, is a maltheistic god. Yes. Misotheist literally means one who hates God or gods. This is an active and intense hatred directed towards a deity. Misotheist is the proper term that Christians should use instead of atheist when they're referring to someone who is angry at God. An atheist does not believe in God and therefore cannot be angry at God. They can be angry at believers in God, but they can't actually be angry at God. A misotheist is the one who's angry at God. Let's move on to the squishy middle ground between belief and non-belief. An agnostic theist. There are two definitions, and I got very confused about this, so just stick with me. The first one is someone who wants to believe in God but doesn't. And the second one, which I think fits this very well, is someone who believes in God but has no way to prove that God exists. An agnostic theist can be having a crisis of faith, losing their faith, or is in a state of belief, but they say that they cannot prove or know if God exists. Pascal's wager would fall under agnostic theism. The first definition, I think, doesn't quite logically fit here, but this also seems to be a catch-all label that gets slapped onto the squishy middle ground. So you can argue about it in the comments. I didn't make this stuff up. I pulled it all off the internet, so that's just That's just how they are defining it, whoever they happens to be. Non-theistic religions do not focus on the beliefs in gods or deities. They emphasize ethical systems, personal practices, or philosophical concepts as their central beliefs. Buddhism, Confucianism, Jainism, and Taoism are examples of that. Now, sometimes Buddhism can be theistic, but many times it's not. Euhemerism is a philosophical and literary theory which proposes that mythological accounts of gods and goddesses originated from historical events and figures and became gods over time. It originated in the 300s BCE and can be summed up as humans make gods through stories. Terry Pratchett was a fan of this line of thinking, and I have to say I like it too, because I love stories, especially mythology. Cultural religion is when someone practices the traditions of a faith but does not believe in or worship the god or gods associated with that faith. This includes cultural Christians, secular Judaism, and unfortunately people living under state-mandated religious practices, who do not believe but must go through the motions for their own safety. Richard Dawkins self-identifies as a cultural Christian as of the time of this video. Agnosticism is the assertion that one cannot know or prove that a god or gods exist. Thomas Huxley, David Hume, Immanuel Kant, Bertrand Russell were all agnostics. It's possible that Albert Einstein may have been, but I like putting him in with Spinoza because that's what he said in his lifetime. Now we enter the realm of non-belief, where philosophy and logic leave theology behind. Atheism is the absence of belief in God or gods. Friedrich Nietzsche, Bertrand Russell, Albert Camus, Jean-Paul Sartre, David Hume, all identified as atheists. Agnostic atheism does not believe that gods exist but cannot know either way. Rationalism and skepticism are forms of agnostic atheism. Hume falls under this category. Gnostic atheism states that it is a known fact that gods do not exist. Epicurus, Democritus, Sam Harris, and Christopher Hitchens would all qualify as Gnostic atheists. There's a subcategory of agnostic atheists, which states that the existence of a god is absurd as the word God has no coherent, unambiguous meaning. Sherwin Wine is he's the philosopher who came up with that idea. Anti-theism states that there is no God and opposes belief in a god or gods, pointing out the harmful nature of religion. Nietzsche and Marx were anti-theists. I think Christopher Hitchens would probably also be considered an anti-theist. Like I said, many people fall into multiple categories here. Implicit atheism is a lack of belief in gods without actively denying their existence. Epicurus, Democritus, and Lucretius likely fit here. It's hard to pin this one down historically because depending on where somebody lived, it may have been illegal to deny the gods or God up to a death sentence, and that's a future video. So many philosophers skirted around this issue prior to the 1900s, late 1800s to 1900s, when it actually became legal to be an atheist. Explicit atheism is actively stating disbelief in gods. Diagoras of Melos was executed for being outspoken about his disbelief in gods. Theodorus of Cyrene faced exile. John Dewey emphasized a naturalistic worldview. The new atheist movement advocates for a secular world based on science and reason. Apatheism is disinterest in the question of God's existence. Dennis Diderot from the 18th century would be an apatheist. Right off, I'm going to say that I hate the name of this, but it's what the authors of the paper called it, so here we are. We can blame Ara, Nora Zion, and Will Gervais for this. So here we go. Mind-blind atheism. Hate it. All right. The understanding or belief in supernatural concepts is unintuitive. Their ability to mentally create and interact with an imaginary friend to which they ascribe a supernatural or divine nature is lacking. Please note that I rephrased that definition from the rather insulting definition that they had in their paper. This form of atheism is common in men and people with ASD. Analytical atheism is approaching the question of God's existence or absence through logical analysis and reason. This is the path that most skeptics and those who are deconstructing often take. It's important to note that not everyone who deconstructs their faith leaves it. About 58%, give or take, will stay in the faith that they were raised in. Incredulous atheism is a lack of belief in God or gods due to being raised in a safe, stable, secular environment where religious leaders are not the most credible members of the community. The needs that religion would fill are met by other social elements. These atheists are not anti-religious. Belief is just not a factor in their lives. Around 28% of U.S. adults are religiously unaffiliated, and 58% of parents with children under 16 are raising them without a religious affiliation. Ethical atheism is disbelief based on the moral failings of a god. An example is the problem of evil, immoral teachings, as in like sexism, slavery, genocide, because God said so, etc. I'm aware I framed that based on Christianity. Apologies for that, but that was the culture that I came out of. Matt Dillahunty and Christopher Hitchens are prominent ethical atheists. Existential atheism is disbelief based on the idea that a God has no authority over human life. Existentialism emphasizes individual freedom, responsibility, and the search for meaning in a seemingly meaningless world. There is no preordained purpose or inherent meaning in life. Individuals must create their own values and meaning through their choices and actions. Jean-Paul Sartre is an example of an existential atheist. Ex-religion atheists or agnostics. Examples of this are ex-evangelical, ex-Christian, ex-Muslim, former pagan, etc. The person has left a formal religion for various reasons, often due to religious trauma, and they must deal with the negative social consequences like shunning, strained family relationships, loss of friendships and business ties, etc. Secular humanists. Secular humanists prioritize human welfare, well-being, and flourishing, emphasizing the importance of reason, science, and critical thinking in shaping personal and societal decisions. Isaac Asimov, Salman Rushdie, Terry Pratchett, Charlie Chaplin, and Gene Roddenberry are all examples of secular humanists. The secular humanist movement is actually huge in the United States. Non-theistic Satanism. Creeds vary, but respect for individuality, free will, and self-determination are common, along with rebelling against harmful or oppressive social norms. It is critical to note that non-theistic Satanists do not believe in anything supernatural. The fictional character of Satan is symbolic. Anton LaVey of the Church of Satan espouses a naturalistic and materialistic worldview. The Satanic Temple was co-founded by Lucian Greaves and is primarily a social activism organization focused on human rights, equality, religious freedom, and trolling Christian nationalists via a goth aesthetic. There are some philosophies within atheism or agnosticism worth touching on. It's important to recognize that just like not all Christians, not all atheists subscribe to one particular worldview. So I'm just going to list these and list them right here, okay? Naturalism, materialism, humanism, skepticism, logical positivism, Unitarianism, absurdism, existentialism, objectivism, new atheism, agnostic atheism. Here are some philosophies that are not exclusive to atheism but are often related to atheism. We have nihilism, epistemology, pacifism, pragmatism, anarchism, the history of ideas, metaphysics, cognitive science, analytic philosophy, bioethics, and neuroethics. I am aware that this list was huge, and I did not get into details on this. but I hope that it helps you see the range of beliefs and philosophies that people can hold. I think it's important to understand the diversity of thinking so that we don't fall into unhealthy and very unhelpful stereotypes. I also think it's important to listen to other people's perspectives. You don't have to agree, but knowing where someone is coming from is better than making erroneous assumptions. It also helps us find common ground and appreciate each other more. Thank you so much for joining me on the Secular Scriptures for this little meander through the wondrous variety that is the human brain. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, and tell me your thoughts below. There are no wrong answers here.